and welcome to Stephen University. This week we are discussing Shirt Club. As always, what started as we're testing out and now has become an as always. Chris, what was it about?
Shirt Club, Dan, is an episode where Mr. Universe wants to start guitar lessons, but really the only lesson to be learned is that of the one that Buck learns.
Which is what, art is hard, or don't be a dick.
Yeah,
or,
I suddenly thought, what was the lesson actually? The lesson was, don't take the mick out of something that means a lot to other people. So Stephen's made a little poster to celebrate, to try and get people to come to check out his dad's guitar lessons. Buck sees it, and Buck makes it into a T-shirt. Stephen's pleased because he thinks that means everyone's going to have lessons, but really they're just laughing at it because they think it's, a bit corny and sad and stuff. So Stephen gets revenge by assassinating the mayor with a T-shirt that Buck drew for his dad when he was younger, which makes Buck, I think, both get emotional about the dad shit and feel bad that he upset Stephen or took the mick out of Stephen. So he decides to apologise to Stephen and take a lesson of guitar teaching from the dad as well. From Greg.
Yeah.
Episode ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Succinct.
Yeah, very.
But I mean, didn't miss anything out.
No, that's about it. I think this is an odd one because last week we sort of said a lot of meandering, but quite a good point, quite a good message. So the lack of so the meandering in the middle was sort of more acceptable. And I'm wondering if this week maybe there was maybe harder to justify because I don't think the ending is strong enough necessarily to warrant.
I disagree.
The build up. Oh, interesting. Go.
I don't. Well, I disagree for two reasons. One, I don't particularly think it was meandering. It was all as succinct as that description was. It was all motioning forward. It was all
True.
For a purpose.
That's maybe meandering is the wrong word then. Maybe meandering is not the wrong word.
My mic fell over. And two, I can't criticise the episode because I've been saying for weeks that I thought would be fascinated by and wanted an episode where there was no gem shit at all. Not gem shit is a negative, but there was no gem stuff. And this week there was no gem stuff. There was no magic involved, and I got my wish, and it was great. I can't be like it was the best episode of the show ever because it wasn't. But a part of me genuinely doesn't think it was meandering. Genuinely thinks it was all entertaining, and I've been, I don't want to go, and I don't want people to be able to go, well, you wanted a gemless episode. This has no gem stuff. I think about that. Fine, it's not the best episode of the show ever, but imagine Power Rangers where they don't fight a big Zord or morph, or this was kind of Power Rangers without the morphing. So for them to pull it off in any way is a pretty cool thing and an attribute to the show. A testament to the show.
I think, for me, I think the episode's funny. I particularly laughed hard at when Stephen shoots using the T-shirt at Mayor Dewey, and his bodyguards, instead of leaping in front of it, flap about and run either way, away from him, completely abandon him. I think, for me, the problem, and the reason I'm never as fond of this episode, despite being entertained by it, is that historically, when they found a character we haven't really had a focused episode about before and focused an episode on him or her, I've been kind of blown away by it. They've been really strong episodes. And I just don't think this one is quite up to that caliber in terms of, I don't think we get the same level of layering, particularly when it comes to to Buck. I'm just not sure.
You know what it needed for you? It needed one scene. Me saying, I think Buck learnt the lesson of both, to remember what it was like to care for your dad, and he welled up at his dad loving it, and he He then went and bought guitar lessons for that reason. He wanted to do something nice and make Stephen feel that he'd achieved his purpose. You wanted a scene that showed that. I think you wanted a scene where he says something to his dad, or he, I think you could, and I think that's. I don't think this is the reason you wanted that scene, but I think it's fair to argue that, and I know you're not arguing this, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think it's fair to argue that scene is needed, because you kind of have to put a lot of piecing together, and it is a kids show, and I don't know if the tear's enough, but I love the sophistication of the writing, that a tear could be enough, and I know you got that. I'm not saying you needed that scene to get that, but I think you needed that scene because that would have elevated the Buck element of this story.
Yeah, I think I sort of see what you're saying. I think you are on the cusp of what the problem was. I agree with you that it is incredible that they communicate all that with so little, but at the same time, for as clever as that is, I think maybe the message being a little bit stronger and being fractionally less subtle might have elevated it slightly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Because I think it's the difference. How do I explain this? Like, I can't think of a good analogy for it. Because I think for as clever as the writing is there, if you even slightly dilute the message, even fractionally, whether you get it or not, which I don't think anybody didn't get it, I do think that it would have been more maybe powerful, less diluted.
Yes, yeah, because you would have got. We don't see in like Lars and the Cool Kids. We see Lars get his moment in Island Adventure. We see Lars and Sadie have their moments. We see it's kind of a similar problem we had to the Horror Club. It's all the club episodes. You kind of see Ronaldo and Lars realise and make up, but you don't really see it. And if we'd have seen that, and if we'd have seen Buck realise that,
there's a certain amount of closure to that, isn't there?
Yeah, it just would have made closure and more justification. I think if you're going to, and again, I love that it wasn't, but if you're going to not have the gems, and especially if you're going to not have gem stuff involved, you better have a damn good character story to make
not
that,
just
and
not just that,
justify that.
Not just that, but actually, not only do you not have the gems and the gem stuff, but actively do a scene making fun of that fact. There's a great scene in this episode, which I loved, where Stephen runs in like, guys, I need your help, and it's about the shirts, and they're just like, what, are the shirts taking over the town? Are the people possessed by the shirts? Are the shirts killing people? And he's just like, no, they're just being used to, in a way I don't like. It's really well done. It's really adorable. And then they'll just sit back down like, yeah, we're not dealing with that. That's a Stephen problem.
Great scene.
And I think though I'd say that the problem I think is that it's a little bit a matter of perspective, because I think it's a really fine balancing act, that. Because we say, and I've said, that you want subtle. You don't always want on the nose, and you want the show not to pander to children. You want it to be subtle and sort of there, and be able to piece it together, and sort of the characters be able to communicate things without communicating things, and it all sort of fits. And we talked about that in it being a really positive point of On the Run. And at the same time, obviously you want to be able to get the emotional message across so that people really resonates with people. And maybe the issue is twofold here for me, because maybe they went just a little too subtle, so the balance was just slightly off.
I think so.
And the message itself wasn't, it didn't resonate with me that personally. So I think that's part of it too. Whereas, like, I think it's easier to empathize with Amethyst's plight than Buck's, because I think with Buck's issue, it's quite a selfish problem to begin with. He thinks it's lame to like your dad because his dad's a bit lame.
But do you not think there's something, and it's interesting because it's a message, because I imagine there are people out there that love this episode, but it isn't, in terms of resonating with someone, it's an older person's resonating. It's the episode of Boy Meets World where they do the plot where Corey, basically his mum says to him, you don't come home and chuck a ball around with your dad anymore, a baseball around with your dad anymore, you chuck it around with your friends. and that feeling of that unfledging support and open affection for a parent. When you get older, suddenly that's not cool, and actually that's a bit of a shame, and it's such a weird thing to kind of have that. And maybe that's the other thing. It's a very adult message, or and I don't mean adult as in like explicit, but it's a very mature message, not aimed at the audience that the show's going to. So maybe that's why it feels left field as well. But it is nonetheless interesting that they've gone down that route. But again, that's kind of fansplaining, because there's a tier. I'm going off of, well, there's a tier and him asking Greg for a lesson. That's it. Those two things are me fansplaining and saying that message is there.
I don't know, because the message is clear, because it's because he reacts specifically to what Stephen does. If that reaction wasn't a direct relation, because he doesn't just suddenly change his mind. Do you know what I mean? It's very well done. Stephen gives him a taste of his own medicine, and then he realizes what he's done wrong.
It's great. But I think that's him realizing what he's done wrong. I think him realizing the open affection for a parent message I've just spoken about is him seeing his dad well up at being reminded of the letter.
Yeah, but I think that comes directly as a result of Stephen's actions, because he sort of, by shooting those shirts off and showing him seeing those shirts again, he's reminded of the fact that he felt the way about his dad, that Stephen feels the way about his dad now.
But there is, of course, also without that scene, there's a completely different interpretation, which is that he was crying because everyone was making fun of him.
Yes.
I don't think it's absolutely that at all. But as a child, well, maybe I'm doing a disservice to children here. Apologies if I am. But I could completely see a child watching it and going, "Oh, he got bullied and was crying because he didn't like bullying, so that made him apologise to Stephen." Still a fine message, like it still works. I'd be intrigued, and comment below. I'd be intrigued as to whether other people interpreted it, how they interpreted the episode, whether they got that deeper affection for parents message that I'm talking about.
I mean, I just want to clarify as well. I like this episode on the whole. I do think it is a good episode. I don't think it's a bad piece of television. I mean, there are pretty much no bad episodes of the show.
I think it's funny because I thought it was good. And I thought it was very good, and especially the no gem thing. The more we've talked about it, I think it's great. The more we delve and twist that knife on that message, and the more we talk about that, I agree it's missing that scene. But the more I respect the boldness to go that deep.
Yeah. I mean, that's become the show's bread and butter at this point, though. Would you not say? Like, they
yes,
it's not that at this point that shouldn't necessarily be it. Not a surprise. I'm not saying you're surprised by that, but at this point, that's pretty much expected of the show.
Yes,
no,
but every other deep message has been directly applicable to the target audience.
I see.
This is a message that's applicable to 18, 19 and 20-year-olds. So that's part of what I mean for that. I mean boldness is in the subtlety to it, and boldness in the way it's presented, but also boldness in the kids aren't going to relate to that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe, but that's kind of why I want to know other people's interpretation, because maybe that's just me, and that says I've got some sort of father issues.
That kind of proves the point I was making. That kind of proves the point I was making earlier, I think, because I was talking about how, it didn't necessarily resonate with me particularly strongly, but obviously the implication of that sentence is that means it would for others, and you're obviously proof of that. Something about that message resonated with you more than it did me.
Yeah, I think it's because I don't want to let my dad down, Dan.
I mean, now you're just making me seem and feel like a shitty person, so thanks for that, Chris.
No. I was going for like making me seem like oversensitive. Although there is a truth behind that sentence, but I wasn't meaning to make you. I wasn't meaning for any form of comparison. It was a joke at my expense.
I mean, it's interesting though, because you're not wrong. I mean, and I'm not going to go into the details here, but based on our own personal family relationships, it's interesting that we fell on the sides of the fence that we fell on with this episode. I'm not going to say more than that, but it's interesting how predictable that is.
Yeah. Knowing both of us, knowing both of us, if you were to present like these thoughts to me, like blocking out the names, I'd have clearly identified who was you and who was me.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so fascinated to see whether other people thought that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if everyone else was just like, I just thought it was an episode about Buck, like.
I mean, we're in that situation now where we are by nature over-analyzing, because that's just the way a podcast like this has to go ultimately. But I like I said, on the whole, I do think it's a good episode. You would never catch me saying it's a bad episode. I just don't think it's as strong as some of the other single character episodes we've got. When I think about Lars and the Cool Kids, which is the first big Lars episode, or even the Island Adventure one, which was Lars centric in a way, but it was more about Sadie. Actually, no, it's more about both of them. I suppose the Sadie one was Joking Victim.
Yeah, it was. Sadie was Joking Victim. Island Adventure, I considered it to be both of them tangentially. And they, what was so great about Island Adventure was who you felt sorry for switched by the end of it.
Yes, it's a great episode. And then obviously there's the episode as well where I forget the title off the top of my head, where they where the gems break the pizza place, Fish to Pizza, and the family come over, and it's beach party.
It's a great episode. I don't know, I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think it's beach party. Beach games, maybe.
So when I think about the other episodes that have dealt with the other townies, I with the exception of maybe any Ronaldo episodes, which I think we've both had less love for. This is one of the weaker ones, although again, nowhere near that the Ronaldo level.
Yeah, I agree, but I personally give it extra props for the boldness of that message and for there being no magic.
And while it doesn't get as many stuff. And as well, the same thing doesn't get as many points from me, I agree with what you're saying. I think you're right. It's extremely bold. I'm by no means disagreeing with your reasoning. I'm disagreeing with your scoring.
Yeah, but admitting that's a personal opinion thing.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose again, I mean that's the nature of these things, isn't it? In general, I think and it's interesting now that we're in a situation where it's happened once or twice now, where you've liked an episode more than I have.
Yeah. No,
and I think
cool.
that is a sign that we have reached a real.
But it's so interesting because like I don't want it. I not, and it's nothing to do with the podcast or what people come here for. I don't want it to grip me in like the way Lost did, for example, because I'll just stop recording and then power through 6 episodes and have to pretend I haven't seen them already. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like I want to be more invested and be more of a fan, but I'm also scared of what that means.
I think if we stopped this podcast right now, you'd power through. I think you.
Oh yes, I think I would. I don't disagree, and I think.
I don't even think that's now. I don't even think the caveats are there anymore. Because you used to say, yeah, if we stop now, I'd watch a few more. They're only 10 minutes, and if they were on Netflix, like you used to put like little extra bits into if it was convenient and it suited me and it was there and all this stuff. I think we're nearly at the point now where you would make active investment in trying to see this show if we stop this podcast.
But I do think 10 minutes helps with that, because you'd have to really find time for half an hour. But slight caveat to that, that's partly because that's imagining it was the same number of episodes, but they were half an hour. If it was half an hour, but there was only a season, probably keep watching. So,
So I'm waiting for the point when you're no caveats, just I would watch this show.
But that's what I'm scared of, because once you get to that point, the next step is I'm gonna just watch this show, and like we record one of these at 9, and you got some work to do or some editing, and we can't record more, and I'm just like power watching it. I remember early How I Met Your Mother, both me and my girlfriend at the time would watch it together, and we loved watching it together and made a big deal of it, and we were both secretly watching it on our own because we couldn't stop watching it, and we're having to, each of us was watching the same episodes multiple times.
That's amazing.
So I don't want to. And you were like the dealer at that point. You were giving us the episodes, so you're to blame as well.
Yeah, because I'd been watching it since for a year or two, and it was like 2 or 3 seasons in, right? And like I had access to the episodes.
Exactly. It was midway through season 4. Because what I loved about it is you'd been frustrated for ages because we as a group were like still watching Big Bang Theory, and you for ages had been like, guys, there's a better show on just before it that you're not watching.
That's right.
And everyone would be like, yeah. And then eventually we all got obsessed with How I Met Your Mother, and we're like, man, this is much better than the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, it is. Well, except for the very final episode, which was dog shit. Anyway.
Yes, How I Met Your Finale is an episode of Nothing But Static that you can.
Yeah, if you want to get our thoughts on why I hated
reactions.
the finale of How I Met Your Mother, even though the final season was actually relatively good. Yeah, go to Nothing But Static and find an episode called How I Met Your Finale. Subsequently, if you also want to find out why I hated the final episode of Dexter, there's an episode called Breaking Dexter where we compare the final of Breaking Bad to the final of Dexter. Guess which one fares worse.
Hey, worth saying, both of those were immediate. That isn't with a couple of years hindsight. That is, these are our immediate reactions.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that my anger in those episodes, it might surprise you guys, because I've become a little bit known on our other podcast, Nothing But Static, for angry rants. They don't happen very often, but when they do, they are quite. When I get really riled up, it's quite aggressive. So, just a warning, it's a tonal shift from this podcast, where I'm obviously a fan of the show.
Yeah. Man, that was rough. I Met Your Finale. Because I think I did say, I think I say it on the podcast, and this isn't some sort of cheap ploy to get people to download it, but it was the every other time I'd say on the podcast, it is that when you were younger, I maintain, when you're younger, and I mean this at school and teenage years and at university. So I'm talking when it sounds so old-fashioned and typical, but when you get a job is when this changes. Before that point, you watch TV differently. You power through. You've got the time to watch loads of it. You've got the time to rewatch it. You've got the time to check out forums to discuss it, and a few shows, get through the crack. Game of Thrones has been that for people. Obviously, for people listening to this, Steven Universe may be that exact show, but that you still have, I think, even then you have a different affection if you got into a show young. Friends, The Office, Kenan and Kel, Boy Meets World. There are shows like that I had a real emotional resonance with, and How I Met Your Mother was the last. Only Fools and Horses. How I Met Your Mother was like the last of that group, and it was the most disappointed I've been with a finale of any of those shows. So to kind of go into it with such, that's sort of spoiling the episode. But just for those that aren't going to bother listening to that, it was rough.
It was a sad day for all of us. But anyway, back to Steven Universe. A couple of little quick continuity things, Chris, that I thought were cool when I read about as always with this podcast, I do a little bit of research just to see if there's anything interesting about the episode. The It's a Wash, car wash place is still damaged from Yellowtail's boat in Steven and the Stevens. I thought that was a neat little thing. The warehouse that Bill Dewey is using to store his campaign inventory is the same warehouse that was used for wrestling in Tiger Millionaire and as the club in Alone Together.
Nice.
I love that that keeps coming back. Apparently, this is the second time that Mayor Dewey's bodyguards abandon him. Oh, actually, I think this is a reference to a future episode, so I'm going to leave that. I won't read that one out. Same sunglasses Stephen wore in Coach Stephen. And it's the same T-shirt cannon that appears in Laser Light Cannon.
Cool.
Yeah, that's some neat little continuity stuff, I suppose.
Yeah. Cracking.
Yeah. It's possible the title may be a reference to the 1999 film Fight Club.
I don't think it is, but all right.
And apparently, in honor of the episodes, the crew shared a picture of I don't know what that is. The kind of salad that Buck Dewey requested but couldn't get because it was a donut store. Apparently, that's a thing.
Oh, it's a real salad.
It's a real type of salad, and that apparently the crew shared a salad when they were watching.
Brilliant.
It, apparently.
I mean, you peaked, Dan, if I'm honest with your trivia.
Yeah,
I
that
think
wasn't
you should've
great,
stopped.
was it? Yeah. Well, I love that one of the piece of trivia is Greg's phone number is revealed. That's not trivia. That's. I mean, whatever.
Leave your comments on the lesson and all that stuff, and leave your comments on How I Met Your Mother if you fancy it.
Yeah. Leave comments is the idea behind that, and subscribe. Yeah. Also, if you're fed up having to come to YouTube to watch this every time, just subscribe on iTunes and it'll download to your phone or whatever device you use automatically every week.
If you fancy it, a review on iTunes would be lovely as well.
Please do that if you have an iTunes account. Yeah. Yes, we would like that. That pushes us up the rankings. Apparently,
don't want to ask too much. You know, your time is yours, but if you fancy it,
yeah. And I'm going to do that thing that most YouTube channels. There's a button below that says subscribe. Hit that. See what that does.
Yeah.
Don't hit it twice though.
Yeah, I love how.
If the first time you press it, nothing really seems to happen. Don't worry about it. Just leave it. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
And then there's like a thumbs up button as well. Hit that one. Don't experiment with the thumbs down one. That makes. I
haven't looked for that. Have we been thumbed down on a few of our videos?
Yeah, a couple, but it's usually one dude. I reckon we've like really angered one guy, and he went through one day and thumbs down a few of them. I think it's like one dude we really pissed off.
It's that dude that called us fat on our web series Liquid Lunch.
Yeah. Oh man, for those of you who don't know the pain, he called me fat.
I can't remember.
There's a guy that referred to me and my character as the fat one, which like was just like the funniest thing, because it was just like there were so many things about that made me that were just like strange about the choice to like he made it seem like the character of the cat was the fat one. Like we'd written it and gone, what do we need for that web series? 2 characters. We'll have a not fat one and we'll have a fat one, and the fat one will really like food. Like that. That's not what we did. Anyway, you weren't the fat one. I reckon we were relatively equal in weight at that point.
Well, I reckon we've always, if I may be so bold, and I hope I don't offend with this, but I hold my weight on the side of me, and you hold your weight on your belly.
Yeah, that's about right. And my chins, my multiple chins.
Yeah. You got more chins and more bellies. I've just got ripping great love handles. So we were different kinds of fat, but we were both fat. Not that there's anything, wrong with that.
I would agree.
Didn't mean to make that rhyme, but
I would agree. So yeah. Anyway, this is just now we're just going down that route. But yeah, so I suppose while we're here to you can check out our web series that we did. We did one called Liquid Lunch, which is a couple of 2-minute things, and you can figure out which one of us is the fat one. And then there's another web series we did called, I'm still not at all bitter this many years later. That was like 2012 or something. 2011, in fact. Wow, long time ago. 6
and there's
years.
one we did called Writing Space, where to make it easier for everyone, we both put on weight.
Yep. Both pretty chunky in that too. So that's that one's on this channel, Writing Space, I think. If you go back far enough, there's a 30-minute version that's like reworked so it works like a pilot, and then there's episodic versions where it's like 5 or 6 5-minute episodes. So yeah, check that out. Liquid Lunch is on its own channel though, because we didn't produce that. We were just in it and helped write.
I think we've linked to it on ours though. I think it's liked. Videos.
I think we've got a play. I think we made a playlist somewhere with them in. So maybe you'll find that on our channel.
You should be able to find it on ours. There you go. What's next week's called, man?
That's the question, Chris. I mean, I'm certainly not at all stalling here while I look it up when I say that it's called Story for Stephen. Yeah, it's called Story for Stephen.
Hey.
I knew that all along. I was just building up tension.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool.
This might be the ultimate awkward ending. We've just talked about being called fat and then tried to plug our web series no one watched, and it's just all a bit sad, isn't it?
Should we just let it tail off then?
Yeah, please.
See you next week. Yeah. Story for Stephen.
Story for Stephen.
It's partly awkward because we're still overweight now.
Yeah, I think that whole bit works better if we'd lost the weight since.
Add that to add that to the reasons. That and general health.
Lack of exercise.
No, I mean reasons to lose weight. Not. I know why we're big.
Oh, sorry. Reasons to lose weight. So we can be slightly more vain when we do web series and stuff.
I'd like it just so that people stop calling me big man as an affectionate term.
You're right, big man.
Did you say it a lot?
Your problem is you're also fairly tall. I don't get that because I'm quite short.
I say it, and we'll end it here because I want to go eat dinner. Fucking, that's not helping the cause. But I get a lot of you look like you play rugby.
I don't know what that means.
I know.
Great.
Or you look like you should play rugby. Like they know I don't.
Dear Lord. Right. I think we'll save ourselves and end it there, Chris.
Awkward. Bye.